into the fascinating and concerning world of methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA, superbug that's adapted to resist many of our strongest antibiotics. Although MRSA doesn't have a traditional life cycle like viruses or parasites, its journey from colonization to infection is a critical story in understanding how it spreads and persists. To our podcast, No MRSA, No Problem. I'm Bella.
And I'm Megan.
And you're listening to episode 1, where we're going to go over the life cycle, life stages, taxonomy, habitat, and some fun, interesting facts. So, often begins as a harmless passenger living on the skin or in the nasal passages of healthy people. This is called colonization. About 1 in 3 people carry Staphylococcus aureus, and 2% carry the resistant MRSA strain without showing any symptoms, or asymptomatic as you would say it. It's essentially just hanging out using specialized proteins to stick to the surface of your cells, waiting for the right opportunity to cause trouble.
So you would consider this a silent but deadly?
Exactly, yeah. So MRSA doesn't always stay harmless. When it gets into a cut, a surgical wound, or the bloodstream, it can trigger an infection. This is when MRSA's life cycle gets super dangerous. For us, not for the bacteria. It produces toxins that kill immune cells and enzymes that help it invade deeper into its tissues. This is how MRSA causes skin infections, pneumonia, and even life-threatening bloodstream infections.
So if antibiotics aren't effective, then this could cause sepsis, correct?
Exactly. This is also why another one of the million reasons why this bacteria is so dangerous. What makes MRSA particularly tough is its ability to resist antibiotics and because it carries the MECA gene, which produces a modified version of its target protein. Leading into that, did you know that Alexander Fleming, the man who introduced us to penicillin, actually warned people about the risks that can come with underdosing with penicillin? So when this new virus was broken out, he thought that penicillin would be great to combat this. However, he mentioned that there's no risk of overdosing. Probably not the best way to phrase that, but there's no risk of overdosing on penicillin. However, there is a risk when you underdose, and that's because your body can create an immunity towards it. And in this case, MRSA holds onto those cells, identifies it, and makes it so that this antibiotic can no longer work for the body again. And so 5 years after penicillin was introduced to the public, already 40% of people were immune to it. This clever move makes antibiotics like methicillin ineffective, like we just talked about. And MRSA isn't just playing defense. It also forms biofilms, slimy layers that shield it from the immune system and drugs, helping it persist in chronic infections. MRSA spreads from person to person, often through direct contact or contaminated surfaces, and especially thrives in places like hospitals.
This is why, as health-associated MRSA infections are very much an issue, why there's talks about should doctors be wearing ties, because they're finding that there's so much MRSA just living around in a hospital, from the curtains to what could be on a lab coat.
Ooh. Imagine trying to just look your best at work and you can't even wear a tie to impress your patients since full of the bacteria that could kill them. No. Also think it's on the curtains too, and that's super MRSA ridden and staph ridden, so it's everywhere. Very, very hot spot for infection. People with weakened immune systems on open wounds provide the perfect environment for it to just hop into a new host. So MRSA's life cycle, if you can call it that, is a consistent battle for survival and domination, both on and inside the human body. It colonizes, it infects, resists, and spreads, making it one of the most formidable superbugs in modern medicine. To understand MRSA, we need to place it on the biological family tree, which scientists call taxonomy. And taxonomy helps us understand where MRSA fits into the microbial world. So here's a little breakdown. The domain bacteria, it's a single-celled organism without a nucleus, so part of the simplest forms of life. Its family is the Staphylococci. This family contains a group of bacteria that often colonizes on the skin and mucous membranes of the animals, which would make sense as to why it lives in the mucosal membrane inside your nose and is also a great place to spread it to somebody else that way. Its genus is Staphylococcus, named for its grape-like clusters when viewed under a microscope. In fact, staphylo comes from the Greek word grapes, and Staphylococcus aureus means golden staff because its colonies often appear golden under certain conditions, which is pretty cool actually. Cool but not cool. This strain is developed resistant to methicillin and other antibiotics, making it a major challenge in medicine. So, Alexander Fleming knew what he was talking about.
Can I make a fun fact here?
Yeah, totally.
So I don't know if you've ever watched Cells at Work. It's an anime that's basically about cells and how they encounter bacteria and everything that. And you just mentioning like the grape-like structure. So fun fact, they have the Staphylococcus aureus as a yellow, indicating the methicillin resistance to it, and it has like a grape-like structures, like it just balls around the entire body, and I just realized that they like totally
that way. That's actually so cool. So, what was the game called?
It's an anime called Cells at Work.
So whoever's into anime, check that out because that is a crazy cool correlation that Megan just brought into the conversation. Another cool or maybe terrifying fact, I guess, if I could hit you guys with it. MRSA's name, aureus, means golden because it produces a pigment called staphyloxyacin, which I definitely just butchered, but that's okay. But it isn't just for looks. The golden pigment helps protect MRSA from the immune system by neutralizing reactive oxygen species, which are like almost like the immune system's chemical weapons, if you will. So MRSA isn't just a super dangerous superbug, it's also a fascinating little bacterium with a rich scientific backstory. Its taxonomy reminds us how deeply rooted it is in the bacterial family, and its golden armor shows just how clever it is at surviving in the face of threats. While diving into my MRSA research, as one does when they're so obsessed with the bacteria that they've had. Like I said, the gift that keeps on giving. Or maybe it's just a one-sided relationship and I can't stop going after it. Nevertheless, something that I found so interesting was the surgeon who actually came into contact with MRSA while performing surgery. Well, actually, I take that back. The only reason he decided to delve into it more was because he thought that when people would present with infections after surgery, that was a good thing, that was a sign of healing. That if you're oozy and gooey and you're crusty around your incision site, that, you know what, you are on track to healthy healing, not a staph infection or losing a limb or something severe.
Swelling? Normal.
Yes.
Pus?
Swelling?
No.
Normal. Pus? Normal. Infection? Love it. Losing a limb? Did my job for me. So one thing I found so interesting was that methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus was first identified in the United Kingdom, and resistance across the acquisition of the MECA-A gene, which encodes an altered penicillin-binding protein, which is why penicillin and all acillins, and then the illins, don't work on this bacteria. So Staphylococcus aureus, which was identified in 1880 by Sir Alexander Ogston, a Scottish surgeon, observed that the bacteria and pus from surgical abscesses was able to link wound to infections. So it was very taboo in that time for him to kind of step out and say, you know what, I'm actually going to argue that the fact that our patients are getting crusty and ooey and gooey and yellow and pussy after surgery might not be a good thing. You know, they're in pain, it looks gross, it smells, they're losing limbs. Well, it was on his own in that one, so he decided to take matters into his own hands and test it by using a light microscope to examine pus samples. And that's what was able to identify the cocci, how do you say it? C-O-C-C-I, cocci? Yeah. So Augustin used a light microscope to examine pus samples, identifying cocci, which is the round bacteria, that are often clustered together. And this is why early antibiotics like penicillin were highly effective against it. But in the 1940s, penicillin resistance in Staphylococcus aureus was first observed due to the production of the B-lactamase enzymes. And around 1959, methicillin and penicillinase resistant antibiotics were introduced to counteract the resistance. But what I found interesting, previous surgeons who are held responsible for both the opportunity for Sir Alexander Augustin to dive into this and figure out the link between bacteria and open wound and MRSA, but because it was such a because it wasn't a largely contracted bacteria, not everyone was presenting with the same cases or the same symptoms. There's pneumonia, there's blood, there's joints, there's all different types of presentations that this can show in a person. Not all of it is a wound or a sore site. So because it wasn't a clustered infection, it was really hard for scientists and researchers and doctors to pinpoint the cause of infection until, like we said, our great late Sir Alexander Augustin stepped up into the spotlight and really opened our eyes.
Let's talk about how crazy surgeries used to be. Right. There was no sterilization in between. So surgeries used to be totally crazy.
Oh yeah.
There was no sterilization between surgeries.
Well, they didn't even have running water. Yeah. I don't even think they cleaned their surgical tools in between.
No, they didn't.
No.
So, you could have a surgery where somebody had MRSA, and if you don't clean your tool for the rest of the day, guess what? You just get free body MRSA.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, that was definitely lingering around.
So insane to think about now, because now we're always disinfect this, make sure everything's surface is cleaned, and that's something that
if I could go back into time and give them a hand sanitizer bottle, I think they would pass away.
They would please wash your hands.
Yeah, I think they would fall over.
It's I know you guys don't bathe or stuff, but please get on that.
You may not bathe or use perfume, but please wash your hands. Much for tuning into No MRSA, No Problem. I'm Bella.
And I'm Megan.
Wash your hands, stay clean, don't pick your nose, and don't get MRSA. And if you do, no problem. Just listen to our next podcast to find out.